Now that's a parking spot.
Introducing the I may have underestimated the size of my car policy with accident forgiveness from American Family Insurance. Insure carefully. Dream fearlessly. Get a quote. Find an agent. Visit amfam.com.
Optional policy features not included in base policies. Review policy for coverages and exclusions. American Family Mutual Insurance Company, SI, and its operating company, 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin.
Welcome to Audiogyan with Kedar Nimkar, a podcast that documents insightful conversations with Indian designers, artists, musicians, writers, thinkers, and creatives of all types. Catch us on iTunes or visit audiogyan.com for more Gyan sessions. Here's your host, Kedar Nimkar.
Today I have Denzil Smith with us on Audiogyan. Denzil is an Indian film and stage actor, producer, and is known for his stage and screen roles as character actor. He has a long-standing association with both Motley Productions and PrimeTime Theatre. He has a huge body of work from working in Bollywood films to theatre, from television to being a voice artist and more. And today we are here to discuss and discover his relatively less known side, which is love for music, especially jazz. He has been the host for jazz festivals, concerts at NCPA, Bluefrog, and many more. So thank you, Denzil, for giving us your time, and it's a real honor to have you on Audiogyan.
Thank you, Kedar.
Although you have huge body of work, much of it is documented online. There are some YouTube videos. Yeah. I wanted to have a conversation with you around jazz and my personal curiosity also. And also there's a jazz play which is coming up at NCPA, which I'll plug in the last. But so that's the premise of our conversation. And to begin with, if you can... I'm like a Hindustani classical listener. I listen to a lot of Kumar Gandharva, Begum Akhtar, and like that. And I don't know, but there's a lot of similarities between jazz and Hindustani classical, to my understanding, especially when it comes to, say, solo expression or improvising on the spot. So if you can just give us a flavor of what jazz is and what all components constitute. I don't want to get into the technical aspect of it, but for a layman, what is jazz? And
Yes, there are great similarities and common denominators between jazz and Hindustani classical, both North Indian classical and Carnatic music. Yeah. So jazz basically is a type of music that originated in the early 20th century in African American communities, and with its base in ragtime and blues. And the basic characteristics of that music is improv, which is common with Hindustani music. And recently, in new jazz, that is avant-garde and modern jazz, it is characterized by a lot of distortion and of pitch and timbre.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That's the new modern, avant-garde sort of stuff, which is coming out.
Does it, I don't know, I may be using a wrong terminology, but where they play with high pitches and like very offbeat kind of things, that's what you're referring
to?
Yes.
Okay. Free form.
Yeah.
It's not really structured, but still in a larger picture, if you look at it, there is a sort of a structure.
Correct. There is a tempo.
There's no immediate visual. You won't see. It's not evident. The structure is not evident. Yeah.
Okay. And how, like, what was the process? Because I've been just reading up a bit about it, and it ventured into, it came to India in 1920s or so.
Right.
And so if you can just give me that background also, how did it...
That's not very long, actually, since its origins in America, in, say, around 1900 when it started. Actually, it was first called Jazz, Jass.
Oh,
and it was named, the name came about from the fragrant flowering plant jasmine.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, meaning this music is fragrant and flowery, and colorful. So jasmine, it was originally called JASS, but then that word JASS also began to be applied to something related to baseball.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then they changed the spelling to JAZZ. That's how
And
the
who
word
were
jazz.
who were the change makers? Were they Indians or?
No, that's I'm talking about Afro-Americans in the early 1900s. Mainly, it started in the plantations in the South, Afro-American communities. Yeah, and as I said earlier, its basis was ragtime and blues. Those spiritual Negro songs that they used to sing. It came from there. So, sorry, you were saying?
No, and also wanted to understand where, if you can just draw some picture about, or paint us a picture about where do like blues or is there a thin line between blues and jazz? Or
There is very connected. There's a lot of connection between blues and jazz. Yeah, because the origins of jazz came from blues.
Okay.
So there is still that element there, very, very much ingrained in jazz.
So what triggered jazz, as in what made... So I was interviewing Dhanashree Pandit Rai, and like we were discussing origins of Thumri. Right? How did it came about? So someone in the court of Wajid Ali Shah just said that let's experiment with some other forms. And that's how it like probably started. It's not very defined. There's no demarcated line as such. But same way jazz was like a manifestation of what triggered?
I think it was more of a protest. It came from protest and a protest expression.
Okay.
Calling for revolution. Yeah. Because these were oppressed communities. The Afro-American communities in the early 1900s in America there was a lot of color prejudice and there was a lot of, even you might say, slavery. And these communities had no form of expression other. They were like really dabaud sort of thing. Okay. Yeah. And this came from there because what would they do in their free time? They would sit and sort of sing, or while they were working in the fields, they would sing. And this improv aspect, let's not sing the same thing today, let's little change here and there, let's add something here and let's add something there. And that's how the form came about.
Wow.
Yeah. And to add to that was this whole, this feeling of being, oppressed. Yeah. So this was a great expression for them. So jazz is revolution, basically. Yeah.
Interesting. And what constitutes a jazz? As in, just again for a layman, there's a cello, there's a sometimes there's a saxophone, sometimes there's a trumpet. Are there any patterns as to how this is performed, or is it just...
No, there is no strict pattern. It has now gone into various streams, and there are different labels. There's bebop, there's swing, there's blues, So it's gone into various, you can labels as it were. Even avant-garde now is a label. Yeah. There's Indo-Jazz, which is a very, very fine and popular label now, which was one of the first really, what we call fusion stuff. Thanks to Ravi Shankar, actually.
Yeah.
Ravi Shankar was the man who popularized Indian music abroad. A lot of credit goes to him. Okay. And then Ustad Allah Rakha and several others. Okay. So, the elements that are there is a melody. Basically, it's a melody. And then there is improvisation of that melody, on that melody, within the same scales. Yeah.
And is it always has to... so what contribution of vocals has jazz? As in, like, I'm sure like it would have started with vocals and then it would have landed...
instrumentation. Yes. It started with vocals. So the vocal in jazz is almost like an instrument.
Okay.
It's to the level of an instrument. Because you also improvise with vocal, what they call scatting. The same thing we have in Hindustani classical music. Yeah. Scatting and, that improv that these people do on the rags, the great Pandit Bhimsen, and etc.
Tana, and those things, right?
Yeah. So the voice is like an instrument, which also sings the melody and then improvises on that melody. Yeah.
Wow, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Scatting and this is the same. What Indian musicians do, what Indian
Laikari and Tanbazi and those kind of things. Okay. So what, according to you, could be the reason why jazz was so quickly adapted by Indians? I mean, again, basic research which I did was, I think it came about in 1920s in India, right?
Yeah.
So how was what was the reason and how did India
See,
adapt?
what happened is that these oppressed African American artists, and there was a lot of color prejudice and all that. They didn't get platforms abroad. They were very talented. So they looked for stages abroad, for opportunities to work abroad. So many of these African American musicians traveled across to Europe, and some of them came to India to play in these big hotels and entertain people. So one such group, or many such groups, landed up in Bombay and in Calcutta to play in 5-star hotels. In this regard, I think the Taj Mahal Hotel in Bombay, the old Taj Mahal Hotel, was quite responsible for jazz, because they had a lot of these jazz bands that came. Yeah.
They gave an opportunity.
They gave an opportunity, yes. So now what happened was that these jazz musicians, these Afro-American jazz musicians that came to India, also interacted with the local musicians. They stayed here for long periods of time, right? And there were also local musicians playing in some of the bars and etc., who wanted to go and hear what this new expression was, this new form, and would go and meet them. So they mentored a lot of these and influenced them. Most of these musicians at that time were Goans and Anglo-Indians. Because of their background in English, in Western music. In Goa, it was almost compulsory in school to learn music. So everybody knew notations and etc. And the Anglo-Indians also were leaning toward it. So these Goan and Anglo-Indians imbibed very much from these visiting Afro-American musicians who mentored them. Yeah.
And were there any particular reason that these guys landed up in Goa as opposed to, because there's a huge coast, right? So was there any affinity?
No, they didn't land. They were in Bombay. The Goan and Anglo-Indian musicians in Bombay. At that time, Bombay. Okay. And in Calcutta. Yeah. In fact, Louis Banks's father, the present, godfather of jazz in India.
Correct.
His father, George Banks, was with Teddy Weatherford, one of the early bands. Used to play with him. Okay.
Wow, interesting. And this question is mainly to understand, was it because, so as you mentioned, Taj gave a lot of opportunity to these kind of people, right? So from 1920s to about, say, 60s, when Ravi Shankar popularized it, there was this brief period of about 30-40 years, right? And people like Leon Abbey or Chick Chocolate and others, how did they influence? Because I was reading they travel all around India, because then again it became like a casteist issue, and they wanted to propagate certain different kinds of social messages through this music, so they traveled around India. So if you can share some insights about that.
You see, what shall I say? I'm not getting exactly what the social message that you're talking about. Jazz. Jazz,
especially in the Indian context,
is a great equalizer. Yeah. So one thing, it unified it brought together these musicians, these of different races. Yeah, it brought together these people. At that time, because it was played in 5-star hotels and other clubs, etc., it was deemed elitist.
Correct.
In India. When jazz actually came from the bottom, from the roots, abroad. In India, it set itself up as elitist. And slowly filtered down. The musicians that interacted with these musicians were not elitist. The audience were elitist. Yeah. So that is where, to the musicians, that ideology, etc., was transmitted. Not to the audience. Now, in terms of the audience, what happened is that the audience was a mixed audience of upper class, but of different communities in India, where it unified different people Yeah, from Maharashtra, from Goa, from Punjab, from wherever, of a certain class, and the Goras, the ruling class that was here. That interaction was facilitated because the common denominator was jazz. Yeah, where they would meet at these dances and enjoy this music together. And there was a dialogue there that facilitated that dialogue. In that way, I might say it helped. Yeah, on that level. So it was a trickle-down effect. Yeah, it was from top down rather than when in America it was from down up. Yeah.
Interesting. And then how did Ravi Shankar just took it to the next level? As in like just popularize it?
Yeah,
I know these are slightly historian type questions, but
the Western musicians, jazz musicians, just as soon as they were exposed to Hindustani classical music, just sort of immediately connected with it. It resonated with it because it had the same elements. No? It had the same elements. It had that, its unique melodic phrasing in Hindustani classical music. It had exciting rhythmic language, different rhythms. Yeah. And as you know, ragas are melodies based on scales. Yeah. And tals, the rhythm cycle. In jazz too, there is a melody, sometimes based on scale, on which it's improvised. Yeah. And then there is the rhythm. They have drums and other percussion instruments. In India, it is restricted to mridangam and tabla, three rhythmic instruments. In the West too, there is the basic drum, but they also explored other instruments, congos and this and that, and all that. Yeah. So this automatically connected because it's very similar. The elements are all there between the two kinds of music, which originated in two different continents. Yeah.
No. And it doesn't have actually that will get into a more technical aspect of it, that whether blues or say jazz has any rag system. But yeah, I won't get into that right now. I want to understand one more thing, which is so in the era of 1930s and 50s, it's often called as the golden age of jazz in India.
Yeah.
Again, this is slightly a historical question, but did jazz play any part in freedom struggle? Because again, it was a medium of expression, right?
As I said earlier, yes, it did. If you might say, if you want a direct impact of the freedom struggle, it is this interaction between the East and West, which facilitated this, between the ruling class and the elite.
No, but these people who were given the opportunity to play in these elite places, were they respected, or they again were just one of the artists just playing something and just entertaining us?
No, it was not the artists who facilitated. The music was responsible because it brought them together. The artists had no message really. Yeah, the artists played the music. The music was what united these people. To listen to the music, these people came together. Yeah.
And there's no... And was there any contribution? Actually, no. Even classical music doesn't have a contribution in terms of the lyrics itself, right? They're more experimental in nature as opposed to other forms. So I'm assuming there won't be much contribution of the vocals, as in the lyrics, to communicate something.
I don't think so. Yeah. I don't think so. And even if there was one or two songs, it would have been in English. So which is what the
correct.
Small sort of audience for that language at that time. Yeah.
Cool. And if you can just tell us few like all-time, like I don't know, top, but like really famous jazz musicians and jazz artists in India who helped.
See, the earliest band, I think Indian jazz band, was I think Ken Mack, Anglo-Indian. He was an Anglo-Indian. In 1922, he had a band called the Bohemians. As far as I know, I think that is the earliest recorded Not recorded. Recorded means not on gramophone. But one of the earliest bands. But then subsequently, with this influence and mentoring, many people came about. There was Chick Chocolate, there was Chris Berry. Leon Abbey was one of those Afro-Americans who came in and played, yeah. There was even Zubin Mehta's father, Mehli Mehta, yeah, who played with a band called the Symphonians at that time. So there were many of these people, yeah.
And how do you, are these available still?
Some
online?
are there. There are some recordings. There are a few recordings available. Yeah.
But you won't find them on like Spotify and like basic.
No, they're not.
These are
common.
like archival stuff.
Archival stuff. In fact, if you read this book, in which some of the research that was done by Naresh Fernandez, and subsequently when Ramu and me used that research and went ahead and collected some more, we did a small contribution towards that book too. It is a book called The Taj Mahal Foxtrot, written by Naresh Fernandez.
Yes,
It
it's on
has
Amazon,
a little CD which has some of those recordings.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. In fact, Taj Mahal Foxtrot, you might say, was one of the first ads. It was the name of an ad done by one of the bands that played and recorded. Audio jingle. Yeah.
I have just ordered that book a few days back.
Right.
Okay. Okay, and more contemporary question, which is like there's a Bombay Jazz Club, right? Which performs at Kala Koda, and there's a lot more. It's a collective, I believe. So, do you have any insights into that? What do they do exactly?
As far as I know, that was a Bombay Jazz Club used to exist earlier in the 50s and 40s. I don't know if there's a new version of it.
Is it like, I'm sure this must be the same thing which is carrying forward the legacy.
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
I have not heard of the Bombay Jazz Club. Yeah.
Okay.
But there used to be Jazz India, which promoted a lot of jazz in India at that time. And there were the famous Jazz Yatras, which used to be held at Rang Bhavan. And at that time, I think we saw the best of world jazz, which was showcased there over 3 days. It happened every 2 years. And it was a feast. It was a jazz feast. Some of the greatest musicians of the world, in the world of jazz, I have seen on that stage in Rang Bhavan, open air. Yeah.
It's very like, I think I should have born maybe like a few years before. Okay, and one last concluding question which I have is, since you have been part of a few festivals and you are tuned into the jazz circuit, I'm assuming, so what's the future like? Because as far as Hindustani classical goes, I'm very optimistic. It's just, it's been there for thousands of years and it's never going to like fade away in the minds of anybody. So same with jazz, because it's quite...
I think worldwide, yes, it will never fade away. It is just going to evolve and new forms of it will come about. Yeah, like the same thing happening with Hindustani classical music also. Yeah. In India, yes, it is growing. There is I think a rapidly growing young audience for jazz, who are interested in it. So there is scope, there is hope. Yeah.
And any particular artist people can follow? Or
see, there is the godfather of Indian jazz, Mr. Louis Banks. He's one of the greatest, really.
But he's like almost like a celebrity type. There must be local.
There is. You can follow him and his band, The Matrix. They're excellent. Then there is his son, who is turning out to be a fantastic musician, Gino Banks. He's a drummer. Yeah. There is a singer whom I like very much, and she's amazing. In the tradition of the great jazz singers, like Ella Fitzgerald, Nina Simone, etc., etc., etc. Her name is Vasundhara V. Yeah, she's excellent. Yeah, I like her enormously. Then of course there is Zakir Bhai, Zakir Hussain ji, who we all know.
Yeah.
He's done his contribution to Indo-fusion is immense. Immense. Then there's a great guitar player.
John?
No, Indian. I'm talking about Indian.
Okay.
You asked me about Indian jazz musicians.
Yeah.
Sanjay Divecha.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah, Sanjay Divecha is a very fine guitar player. He just got a new album out. I think it's available online.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is another musician from Amchi, Mumbai, Dhruv Ghanekar,
Okay.
who has done a lot of stuff. Yeah, in jazz and the world music scene. Yeah. Then there is another young girl. She's a genius. She's also from Amchi, Mumbai. She's a bass player, Mohini De.
Correct. I've heard her playing with Zakir Khan. Zakir Hussain,
yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. She plays bass, right?
Yeah.
Bass guitar.
Yeah, bass guitar.
Yeah.
She's quite something. Little firebrand. Yeah.
I saw her, I think when she was 11 years that time.
Yeah,
and she was playing with on the right hand side, Zakir Hussain,
Yeah.
Tawfiq Qureshi, and in fact, I think Gino Banks was also there at that time. Yeah.
Possible.
Yeah.
She's evolved into something else. Then there is a one and only Ranjit Parrot.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's now doing, I think, a world tour with John McLaughlin, etc., etc.
Okay.
Yeah, Gary Husband and all these people. Yeah. Then there is another girl who has done a wonderful experiment between Carnatic and jazz. Yeah, she's a vocalist. Vari Jayashree Venugopal.
Okay.
Vari Jayashree Venugopal. She's I like her enormously. Yeah. Then there is the boy in my play whose grandfather was also a legend in the Hindi film music and one of the greatest arrangers and responsible for many of the songs of yesteryear in Hindi film music. I don't like to call it Bollywood. Hindi film music. Yeah. Who was the main arranger for Shankar Jaikishan, Sebastian D'Souza, his grandson, who is also with me in the play, which is written by Ramu Ramanathan. Yeah, his name is Reese Sebastian D'Souza. He's a saxophonist. Yeah, plays very good sax. He's also really something to look out for. And there is a girl who I heard recently, who does some excellent Latino stuff and other forms of singing. Yeah, Sangeeta Bhattacharya. Yeah, I think she's Delhi based, but I've heard her in Bombay. So these are, I think, some of the few people that are really to look out for. Yeah, I'm sure their stuff. A lot of their stuff is available online.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Cool. I think this is like a great start for me, at least, to bring some exposure to jazz and the artists whom I should follow, and then start listening more about them.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that on that note, I would just tell our listeners that there's a play happening on jazz. I'll just...
Yeah, on the 14th of August.
Correct. 14th of August, 8 p.m. at Experimental Theatre, NCPA.
Right.
And yeah, it's written by Ramu Ramanathan, performed by Denzil Smith and Reese Sebastian D'Souza.
Right.
And it's directed... the music composer is Madeline D'Souza, and it's based on the research done by Naresh Fernandez.
And Ramu
Ramanathan. Yeah.
And it's directed by Etienne Coutinho.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's directed by Etienne.
So Bombay Jazz, remember, 14th of August,
Yes.
NCPA, 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Be there.
Yes.
Thank
okay,
you,
sir.
Kedar.
Thank you, sir. It was real honor talking to you, and really like a lot of food for thought and start. I hope like a lot of people get sensitive to jazz and like start exploring their journey towards this amazing musical form.
Yeah. Thank you, Kedar.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. Catch us on iTunes, Saavn, Stitcher or any podcasting app you use. Do rate us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Stay tuned for more Gyan on Audiogyan.com. Till then, bye.
At Speedway, we've always been here to get you what you need when you need it. We're committed to keeping our stores open, clean, and safe, so you can stay fueled and refreshed all summer long. We've got cold drinks for hot days and frozen drinks for even hotter ones, plus energy boosts, quick bites, and pick-me-ups. We're always on your way, and we're always here for you. So no matter what you need, when you stop by, we'll be ready. Now, any Speedy Freeze up to mighty size is just 99 cents.